Hey guys, it's Cyrus of Chaos. I'm here with Justin Tausig, who's a certified mental performance consultant, and Olympian Ira Zimmerman, who is now a performance coach. And we're going to be talking about sports psychology and specifically how you can keep yourself motivated during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, Iris, do you want to start by introducing yourself? And we'll take it from there. So,
Great, thanks, Andrew. I was a fencer for a long time, and I was on the 2000 Olympic team with my sister. I've have two cadet world championship titles and one junior world championship title, a bronze medalist at senior worlds, which doesn't seem like a whole lot now because everyone is just posting up the W's on the U.S. team.
it still seems like a lot.
But, my sister and I were pretty much trailblazers, and Felicia was the first junior World Cup champion, and then I was the first cadet world champion, which I think is the first world champion for the U.S. in any age category or gender or weapon.
That's cool.
Yeah, I own that back in 1995. So I owned that. And then I owned a fencing club for a long time, Rochester Fencing Club, the place where I grew up. I owned that with my sister for a while, and then I retired from that and became a performance coach for professionals. So now I work with people in business and in sales and in healthcare, how to take some of these concepts that I learned as an athlete and how to apply that under stress and pressure in the workplace.
Nice. Justin?
I also fenced for many years, and I had the good fortune to be on some national teams with Iris and Felicia. I lived in Paris and studied at the racing club for 11 years. And during that time, I was on the U.S. national team, the senior national team, for 6 years. And once I retired from competitive fencing, I moved back to New York and got clinical training, a master's in counseling psychology. I completed a 4-year training program in psychoanalysis, and then a doctorate in sport and performance psychology. So I work with athletes, primarily competitive athletes, and some performance artists on their mental side to the game.
Gotcha.
What you don't know, Andrew, though, about the racing club is that you have to enter through a bar in order to get to the fencing club in the back.
That's pretty cool. It's good advertising.
A bar and a restaurant. It was really very nice.
That's funny. So I guess the first question that I have is, what exactly is sports psychology, and why is that something that athletes should care about and want to practice themselves? And
I think Dr. Tausig can tee it up, and then I can talk as an athlete how it helped me.
Sure, that's perfect. Justin?
Sure. Well, certainly I would say that sports psychology helps you to play your best game. You spend time training your technique. You spend time developing your tactics and your experience of what to do both in training and in competition. But if you don't have the emotional preparedness, the mental preparation for what it's going to be like when you have to score a touch, otherwise your dreams of making a team or of advancing to the next round or something of that nature, those dreams are dashed. You need to be prepared for that situation before you actually find yourself in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of different elements to sports psychology, to performance psychology, and all of them boil down to very simple ideas based on regulating your emotions, adjusting your focus, being present, what now people say being mindful, but before that it was about being present.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of these things allow athletes to do more than they were able to do without that kind of preparation.
Yeah, and as an athlete, I can say I've worked with a number of sports psychologists. Dr. John Heil was with the U.S. team when in 96 and in 2000 he worked with us. And also, with some USOC provided, USOPC now provided sports psychologists. And, the biggest thing that Dr. Heil helped me with is overcoming after an injury. So there's different phases of psychology of injury, and it's something I'm hoping to bring up later on in our discussion that, with lots of injuries, I think I needed to figure out that mindset, right? It's like as an athlete, you're going and everything's all good and you're a kid and you're invincible, and then suddenly you have an injury and you're like, oh God, I'm done and the world is over. And so I think having someone come in and help you gain perspective, I think that's the one biggest thing. Is sometimes we are so much in our heads, and then driving forward, we don't have enough perspective. And the other thing too, which you can see that sets people apart, fencing is such a brain game.
Yes, it is.
Right? And sometimes you could be faster than me, you can be smarter than me on the strip, but if I can maintain emotional, capability and be able to like think on my feet, I might be able to outsmart you, right? So I might be able to get one up on you. So when you get to those high levels, it's really what's between your ears that make a difference. But the last thing I'll say is we also started sports psychology for our kids at the Rochester Fencing Club because we felt it was important to lay the foundations, as Justin was saying earlier, is that there are things that you can lay foundations for so that the kids, as they move up the ranks, can really grab on to the more complex sports psychology concepts that are out there.
Yeah, that I like the way you said that, build a foundation, because like some people, I think mental training is like a very nebulous kind of concept, and people talk about like, oh, he has a great mentality, or like, oh, her mentality is not good, but it's hard for people to figure out how to develop that mentality or change it themselves. And so that's a good way to think about it, is like you can start changing it. And just because you're not like naturally very, I don't know, mentally talented or whatever you want to call it, doesn't mean that you can't build those skills up, and it certainly helps to start them early. So yeah. So the main focus that we wanted to talk about today is how this relates to the quarantine. And one of the things that I get asked a lot is, how do I stay active and motivated during this time as an athlete when I don't even know when I'm going to be able to start competing again? And it's easier to set yourself like a short-term training goal, like 2 months or something till my first competition. But when you don't even know when your first competition is, how are you supposed to develop a plan to stay active and like mentally focused when there's just no clear end in sight?
Justin, go ahead first. I think you've been dealing with this.
Okay, well, I would say the important thing to really remember is to stay active. I know that there have been some people who have gone on talk shows or have posted on social media about, no, it's okay, you can stay in your pajamas for the next week in your unicorn onesie and just binge watch something on a streaming service and eat chocolate bonbons, and that's okay. And I think that is exactly the opposite of what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
I think it is important to structure every day. We humans, we love being productive. We thrive with routine. Not so much routine that it gets stale, but to have some kind of structure. And so what I've been recommending for the clients that I work with is the following. You need to have one of the following 3 elements that you are working on every single day. 1 hour of something which stretches you physically, 1 hour of something that stretches you mentally, and 1 hour of something that stretches you creatively or artistically. And you need to do this, each one of these, every single day. The structure of your sleeping habits also, that's very important.
Before we go on quickly, can I just say that, not knowing any of that before this conversation, my days during the quarantine have been structured around, 1, always doing something video editing related, which I think covers your creative base. 2, always making sure I'm exercising or lifting weights, which covers your physical base. And 3, always taking at least 1 language lesson, which covers your mental base. So without that, yeah, sorry, unrelated, but anyway, continue.
No,
that's great.
Yeah.
No, it's great, and it is related because that structure gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, I never know exactly what the order is going to be or what those things are going to be, but I always use that as like a rough skeleton of what my day is going to be, and I won't go to bed before I do all 3 of those things. So
Fantastic. Kudos to you.
Thank you
for already doing that. But for a lot of people who have been, in the unicorn onesies for the last week, that's something you want to avoid. I have nothing against unicorn onesies. That's fine. But the important thing is that framework. You want to have a reason to get out of bed every morning with a purpose. If you go to sleep every night and you can look back at your day and say, I was productive, I did this, and I did this, then you will feel better about yourself. It's going to be easier to get out of bed the next day.
Mm-hmm.
If the only thing you have accomplished in a given day is, I keep going back to the unicorn onesie. I don't know why, but it's...
hater, Justin.
Whatever. It's probably...
How about we call it a narwhal onesie?
Narwhal ones, that's fine. But if you really don't have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, then it's very difficult to be motivated. If you say, for example, I'm going to work out tomorrow, that's very nebulous. How will you know when you've done it? How will you know when to start? If you put your running shoes next to your bed and you say, tomorrow morning before breakfast, I'm going to roll out of bed and I'm just going to go for a brisk walk, or I'm going to go for a light jog for half an hour. You've done it, you get that check mark, and then you move on. That's what's important, is to have that structure, to stay motivated and to continue moving forward.
Yeah, and I'll just add like a yes and, it's important for kids to have a schedule, and then also to have days, because I'm talking to kids at my club and parents are like, look, like sometimes I can't get them motivated moving. So maybe finding some of those fencing Zoom classes, even other clubs are letting people join. And I do say the schedule's great, and make sure you stick to something so you can check it off. Just one more thing about high performers too. So when I was on a call with some of the fencers, one girl's a super high performer, and for her, a lot of her identity is sort of wrapped up into these competitions. And for her, she's like goes to practice so that she can get to those competitions and she can post up those victories.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good time for people to understand what it is that they want out of fencing. Like, why do I like fencing? So it's a really great thing of like, what does fencing bring to you? What do you like about fencing? What things can you do now? Like, do you like holding your weapon? Okay, hold your weapon. Do an hour of it. Hold your weapon and hit the wall. It's like, I'm more of the person who like digs into a sense of purpose. Like, what does fencing bring to you? I think it's such a telltale sign that if fencing only brings to you joy when you're winning or when you're going to competition, it's a really, really good time to sort of think about why you fence in the first place. Because what sets someone apart, and actually I'm on a committee with Dick Fosbury, and he's the man who does the Fosbury flop. So he was the first person to jump backwards over a high jump. And I asked him, like, what makes you a great athlete? He's like, I just love being out there. And I've asked countless Olympic champions, why do you like the sport? I just asked because I'm curious. Like, I just wanted to see if I could get better, and I just really enjoyed it. So I think when you lose joy of the sport, then it becomes difficult. And I think you can get creative. There's a lot of opportunity right now for you to kind of reconnect with that joy. And I'm going to say one more thing about injury concept. So I know I'm bouncing back and forth, but the other one is, so one is purpose. Make sure your why of fencing is really solid, because it will motivate you on a day-to-day basis, right? If you really enjoy it, it'll be there for you. And the second piece is like, when I was injured and I couldn't use I had a knee injury and I had to have surgery, I would sit and take lessons, or I would watch video, or I would, work on faster parries or hitting the wall faster, or give myself these small little goals. So I felt like Justin was saying, that I could check boxes in other places. So our only level of success and knowledge of training is like, I show up and the coach tells me what to do, and then I do my footwork, and then I fence, and then it equals success. But now you have to define what that success looks like for you. And that's actually really hard. So like, what do you need to work on, and how are you going to work on it right now?
Yeah, I like what you said also about remembering what you love about the sport. like I have also been injured a few times in my career, and this almost feels like a longer injury period where you can't you do in the sense that you don't have access to other people to fence against. But during that time, it doesn't mean that you can't be productive. Like, you can still watch videos, you can still do your own footwork, you can still work on your blade work. And if anything, like I remember always coming out of these injury breaks, and I just felt so motivated at that point to get back into it. So if you look at it through that lens of like how much, if you're really missing fencing, then think about it as motivation to improve during this period of time, instead of like, oh, I can't fence, like this sucks. Use that as a positive motivator instead of something negative. So that's the way that
Yeah.
I see it. So
Yeah, and the hard part is that you don't have a coach telling you what to do at practice. I mean, it's really easy to show up to practice and just be like, okay, coach, what am I going to work on? Really good athletes are self-motivated and decide what they want to work on. And now's a really, really good time for you to really make some decisions. Okay, my coach has been telling me for a long time that like my parries are too big. Maybe I need to get my weapon out and work on my parries so that when I get back to the club, I have something to show my coach. That I
yeah,
personally have taken ownership of my own training, not relying on my coach to take ownership of my training.
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
So
I would say really that the best coach you will ever have in this sport is you. And I think the more you own your career, the better. Your fencing career does not belong to your coach or coaches. Your fencing career does not belong to your family. Your fencing career does not belong to your club. Your fencing career does not belong to the national federation that you're affiliated, or even the country that you represent. Your fencing career belongs to you. So the more that you take ownership of your development, your technical development, your tactical development, your mental and emotional development or preparation, the better you are going to be. There's not enough time for a coach who sees that someone is attacking you to somehow plug a joystick into the reel and move you into the position where you can counter that attack. You have to learn to do it. As my first fencing master, Giorgio Santelli, told me once, because he never coached me while I was fencing. After I was done fencing, I would walk over to him and we would have conversations. And back then I started fencing foil. I was a terrible foil fencer. And I had just lost a match, and I got very frustrated with him because he didn't say anything. And I said, Maestro, I don't understand. My opponent had parents telling him what to do. The coach was telling him what to do. You don't say anything. And he said to me, you are going to thank me. You can't only win when I am here telling you what to do and then lose because I am not here to tell you what to do. And really, that started this way of thinking that I had about I need to be
self-reliance.
I need to be self-reliant. The fencing strip is a very naked place. There's nowhere to hide. And it is not your coach who will take responsibility when you are doing well, when you're doing badly. It is your career. It is your life. You should own it.
Yeah, I actually, at the last NAC, I was reffing someone whose coach was not available at the time, presumably because they were coaching other students. And when the bout was over and this coach did come over, the person flipped out at the coach because they weren't available. And you can't hamstring yourself just because your coach is not available to be with, because they're not going to be able to be next to you 100% of the bouts that you fence. And if you're relying on them for that, that's not good. So
right, the only person who is going to show up to every single one of your competitions
is you. Yeah, totally. So can we talk about how to set up a plan specifically for a long-term goal that we don't know exactly when it will be? So a lot of athletes, for example, have like a 2-month plan. Like, I have a competition on this exact day in July. It's 2 months away. Like, I have a plan in place to get me ready for that point. But how do we put a plan in place for something that has a nebulous end date?
I would say that what you want to focus on right now is understanding your why, as Iris said, and I think that that's extremely pertinent, particularly at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But to work on growth. It's not enough to maintain right now. This is an opportunity
To get better.
right now to get better. If your parries are too big, this is an opportunity to tighten up those parries. If your footwork is questionable, if you have a little bit of space where you can advance, retreat, lunge, you don't need a lot of room to work on the very basics of footwork, the very basics of balance.
And quite frankly, that's something that everyone can improve all the time. So, like...
Yeah,
just not on cement floors, please.
Yeah.
Just not on the cement floor.
Yeah.
That's right. The basics of point control. If you can find a tennis ball and a string, you can improve your point control. One thing that this containment gives all of us is time. Maybe too much time, or it seems like there's too much time. But there are ample things that you can do to fill this space, to fill this time that you can improve on. And I think it's important for every athlete, regardless of sport, right now, and their families and their coaches, to work on things now that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to before because there was a competition coming up right around the corner, so maybe you didn't want to push yourself too much. You wanted to taper. Well, now you don't necessarily need to taper because there is no competition on the immediate horizon.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really dig in and really work on things. And I would certainly encourage people, look at yourself in the mirror honestly and break down what makes you good as an athlete, what weaknesses you have, and try and balance out that game. Try and shore up the deficiencies, the weaknesses that you have. I don't know that any fencer has a perfectly balanced game, 50% offense, 50% defense. I think that fluctuates certainly over the course of a career. I know that was certainly my experience. But I think you don't want it to be 80 offense, 20 defense. That's not going to get you too far. And I think the reverse is also true. So this is an opportunity to do more than you've done before.
Yeah, and I guess I would say is when I work with clients, I have a lot of clients who are really good at deadlines. Like, they get stuff done only when they have time pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost the same thing as, like, as a tournament comes up, you become more focused. You can actually create those deadlines for you at the end of the month, and you can gamify it, make it fun. Like, at the beginning of the month, I could only do 25 push-ups. At the end of the month, how many push-ups can I do? And you can actually challenge yourself and gamify some of these things. Like, okay, my footwork looked like this. Let me take a video of it. Let me see, like, every day if I take a video of it, what does it look like? So you kind of almost need...
Or like ball on a string. I was able to hit it 10 times in a row at the beginning of the month. I want to double that by the end of the month or something.
That's it. And so give yourself what you can do is, so what ownership looks like with a coach is, hey, coach, what are some things that you think I can work on at home? That's, every coach wants to hear that, right? Like, yes, thank you. And like, they go, hey, what are some things I can work on at home? And then gamify it for yourself. Okay, I can only hit the ball. They want me to get my accuracy on. Okay, 10, I've got 10 hits at the beginning of the month, then 100 at the end. And I'm going to see if I can make that, right? Or whatever it is, like without it hitting me in the face or something, So I think that you can make it, this is such a fun opportunity to make it fun for yourself, make it personalized, and gamify it, and make yourself your own deadlines. Yeah, there's a tournament coming up. The tournament just compresses focus, compresses time, and then makes you very focused in on a goal, and also these milestones.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to create milestones. You've got to, simplify that or create some time frame, and then just keep working every month. Maybe every 2 weeks you change it up. It depends on you. If you're someone who wants a goal to be a whole month, then make it a whole month. If you know that the end of June you're going to return, so what do you want to accomplish between now and the end of June when you can return slowly back to clubs? How do you gamify it?
Yeah. So another thing I'd like to point out is that I know that I personally, unfortunately, get a little bit lazy when it's just on me to do things, and I don't think I'm alone in that. At least I like to think that. But another way that you can do this is not just competing against yourself with the balls, but like pick one of your friends to motivate you, and like who can have the most consistent hits at the end of the month or something. Like when I'm exercising, I have shared the exercise program that I'm doing with a couple of other people, and we tell each other like every day that we did it, and it just kind of like, if I'm feeling lazy, but like I know that my three friends who are doing the same program as me did it, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll get up and go do it. And whatever gets you doing it, I think the comp the competitive mindset that like fencers have, you can use that to really help you out. So
I like a couple things you said, because these are things that, like, if you know Peloton, this is what they pull off of, right? Is that competitive spirit, connection, accountability, time, and time constraints, right? And then also, like, they gamify it too. Think about how popular that is, and people are like, oh yeah, I'm so motivated to do it. We're all the same, like connection, accountability, time constraints.
yeah. So you mentioned that like the shift in mentality as the clubs start to come back. So we don't exactly know when that will be, but what do you think the difference will be for people once the clubs start becoming active again? Like how will that change the mindset?
I think that's a better question for you, Iris.
Oh yeah, so thanks. I've been thinking about it, and I'd like Justin to also come in on it, because I was talking to another person in my field, and we're talking, and he does more lacrosse, and he was saying there's like a third phase to injury, right? You have the initial injury, then there's a rehab, and then there's a comeback.
Coming back, yeah.
So yeah, so some people are going to be like, I'm going all in. Like, some people are still processing, and then there are different phases for each person to be able to come back. Okay, so your training when you come back needs a little bit of space, a little bit of direction from the coach of like, okay, we're not going to be able to fence with each other for a while, right?
Yeah.
So this is what it looks like. So clear direction from your coach. Like, this is what's going to look like. We're going to train. You're going to keep ownership of what you're doing. You're probably going to hybrid between home stuff and stuff at the club. And also having a little bit of understanding that it's not going to be how it was. I think, like,
New normal, not the old normal.
and I don't, new normal is tough for me. I just think, like, and I hate to put this out there that strongly, but it's like grief a little bit. Like, you have to be okay that who I was before and how things were, they're not going to be. And that's okay, because what it is now could be better. And now it's a journey, and it's new and it's different.
Mm-hmm.
And I still might be upset that it was some way, but I'm still going to persevere and go forward. And everyone's journey is going to be different. So that's what I meant by phase 3. And phase 3 will look different. That coming back is going to look different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will just go 6 months and then burn out. Some people will take it slowly. Some people will be okay. I mean, it's just going to be a gamut of things, just like injury, coming back from an injury.
I think certainly the idea of using an injury model, I think that's extremely salient for the recovery after this global pandemic. And certainly my experience also, when I was injured, and I had multiple injuries. I had 6 operations on my right hand and wrist.
Oh my God.
And that was, and it always happened in the middle of the season. It was always something, at the wrong time. And it was awful, because I was watching competitions go by and other people were having results or whatever. And I knew that I wasn't able to train normally, but I was still going to see my physical trainer 5 days a week. And we were doing other things. And I was riding the bike machine until my legs fell off. And there were other things that I could do. And I think that that's really very important now and for the recovery phase is, again, controlling the controllables. Yes. What are you able to do now? What are you able to do once the states have started to open up certain counties and see and test it out at phase 1 of that reopening, what that's going to be like, because it's certainly possible during the phase 1 of that reopening in a given county, if the curve spikes again, that they may have to go back to a more lockdown situation.
Yep.
So that's not a failure. That just means that you take one step back. You need to then wait for a moment and then figure it out and then move forward again. And I think the fencing clubs and the fencing coaches have to be extremely mindful of this, and the fencers as well. You have to be patient. Just like in a fencing match where you have to be patient, you can't just charge at someone. You have to have a plan. It's exactly the same thing with this. You have to have a plan. When you go back to training and you're actually fencing with someone, you might not be as good as you were 6 months ago. I read somewhere that for every week you take off from training, it takes 2 weeks to get back. So if that's true, it would probably take me about 18 years to get back to any sort of reasonable shape, which is not possible. So, but the important thing is when I go to fence, I'm just doing straight stuff. I'm just doing nothing fancy, just meat and potatoes, and I expect to be rusty. I don't expect to be brilliant, because that's not realistic. And if you go back to training with the expectation that you are going to be just sublimely perfect, that's not realistic. So you want to keep the expectations realistic. You want to do it in a measured, patient manner.
Yeah.
I have a saying of like, the amount of happiness you have is the delta between expectation and reality. Right? Like if you have huge expectations and the reality isn't there, that's a giant delta. But if you can level it out, then, right? Like if you can level it out, it's much better. So I absolutely think that just know it's going to be different. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be hard. And, you know, I think the reality is there's some clubs that won't be open.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And that's why I use the word grief, and I didn't mean to get so like deep, but I think that when people process grief, they don't always know it right away. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just go to another club, it'll be fine, and then you just charge through. Take some time to be upset. This sucks. That's all right.
Yeah, totally. So one more question I have is for people who are doing everything correctly right now, like you said, the 3 pillars of like creativity, physicality, and mentality, and are training and staying active, what would be some good ways that you could think to mix up the training and keep it interesting during a time like this?
You want to start?
Hey, look, fun is always on the menu. And that's coming from someone who like has to like put fun on a checklist and like check it off. Okay. Like, you know, I'm very serious. And like, I think that it's a sport and it's done for fun. And we work very hard because we want to see the goodness in ourselves and our potential. And that's why I said gamify connection. I loved your idea, Andrew, like connect with others. This really sucks, but let's do something fun. Okay.
Yeah. One of my personal ways of keeping it interesting is like including new people in that like regimen. And each person has something different to bring. So, you know, continue.
I love it. No, I just love it. I love it because I think now we need each other more than ever. And like I said, fun is not easy for me. It really isn't. I know that people say it's funny, but like I cannot sit down to a movie because I'm the kind of person that's like, why am I sitting to a movie when there's like 50,000 things I need to do? I need to get the checklist done. So I'm that person. So I do think that let's have a little fun with it. It is a game. Have fun. Maybe play chess instead of practice one day because it's the same mentality. Maybe divide those 3 things up. Like fencing isn't the physical piece of it, but maybe it's the mental piece of it, or it's like a fun piece of it. Getting creative is always a good thing.
Yeah, I would say the importance is balance also. Periods of high activity need to be balanced out against periods of low activity. But low activity does not mean no activity.
Yeah, it doesn't mean completely slacking off, for example.
It doesn't mean completely slacking off. I think you want to, going back to that structured idea, I think that structure is important. The sleeping pattern is very important. You want to have that. I've had my alarm set to the same time since this containment started, and whether it's a weekday or a weekend, that's the time that I've been getting up. And I think it's important to have that in a lot of different areas of your life, not just when it comes to fencing, but when it comes to your work, or when it comes to spending time with your family, if you have, a family that you're in containment with. I think it's important to, absolutely, keep it fun. Do things that are interesting. Do things that are interesting for you, for other people. Share it. One of the mistakes that I think has been made by the media in covering this is they keep calling it social distancing. This is not social distancing. It is physical
distancing. Yep.
That's what the problem is. Be as social as you want. Have Zoom chats with your friends. Do what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Have FaceTime chats. Call up your relatives. Call up your school, the people you went to school with. Be in contact. Be as social as you like. Make those connections, because so many people right now, even if they're in containment with other people, may be feeling isolated. And so it's important to check in on people and see how they're doing before they reach out, before they're white knuckling it for months because they something's wrong, but they're not really sure what. Don't let it get to that point. Reach out to people. Check in on each other. I think you are your brother's keeper. I think that's important, to be able to reach out and to be able to continue these connections, whether they're athletic or professional or personal. I think it's important to be connected.
And I want to add just a yes and, because coaches are like teachers and are teachers in this aspect. And I have to tell you, I have 5 and 7-year-old daughters, and if the teacher sends an email or just even a video message, my kid's like, oh, they're thinking about me. And oh my gosh, the teacher, they're caring about me. So coaches and the people that are training the children, don't forget how important your impact is on them. So I would suggest not just reaching out to give them fencing drills, but like, hey, as Justin was saying, hey, how's it going?
How are you holding
What
up?
are you playing? How you doing? Okay, let's do Words Against Friends, or something. The connection to a coach helps the parent too, because the parent has a lot on their plate dealing with all the emotional aspect of it too. The coach can make a huge difference. And I know how close a lot of these coaches are. I mean, you've had some Nelia coaches on. Cornell is super close with all of his students. And I think it's really important. Just ask how they're doing outside. And I know they're probably doing it, but just know how important you are to those children.
Yeah, and again, something I always tell people is like, just don't isolate yourself. And if you need, find someone to talk to, and just don't isolate yourself. Even if it's not in person, talk to someone on Facebook Messenger, or have a FaceTime with them. Be as social as you can without actually being in physical contact with anybody. So, yeah. Well, that's all that I've got for you guys. Is there anything else you want to say before we split today?
No, I mean, I guess I would say I'm putting a plug in for Dr. Tausig here, just to say, if you're looking for someone who has fencing experience and sports psychology, that's actually something you can do now, right? Like Zoom calls with a sports psychologist. If you think your kid or you yourself need maybe a little bit of help, like getting through right now, reach out. And there's sports psychologists out there. You have one right here in this Zoom call. I'm happy to meet with people. I am not a certified sports psychologist. I play one on TV. No, I'm a performance coach. So I work with professionals, and it's a different realm, but I'm happy if someone wants to reach out just to talk. But I do think now is a great time to take advantage of that. And so I'm really happy and really feel very lucky that you let us go on so that we can tell people that this is available, that they can work on that. So we appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I would say that it's just like dealing with an injury. it's very easy to focus on all of the things you aren't able to do because your hand is injured or your knee is blown out or you're recovering from a surgery or something. I would say focus on what you are able to do now. What can you do to help yourself? Again, whether it's technically or physically or mentally, there are many things you are able to do that you haven't explored because you are so busy focusing on what you are not able to do. And that goes back to the idea of controlling the controllables. What are you able to do? And it's kind of a broadening of the focus when you're in the middle of a fencing match and your opponent has figured out your game. It's very easy to focus on, oh, every time I attack him, he parries and he hits me. Oh, I can't attack him anymore. Focus on what you are still able to do. There are many ways to score touches. There are many ways to figure out the puzzles. And I would say the people who are going to be best off at the end of this pandemic are the people who find ways to be productive and adaptive during the pandemic. Don't wait. Don't wait for some universal pause button to be pressed and then, life revs up again. Time is passing. This time we all have right now is precious. Make the most of every opportunity you have right now because there are many.
Yeah, definitely.
And you don't have to do it by yourself.
Yeah,
right? And
that's important to remember.
Andrew, you've been saying that. Yeah, and you don't have to figure it all out on your own. So just remember that.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I am going to make a rare self-plug. Like, if you guys are looking for a way to mix it up, this is I think now the 51st video that I've made during quarantine. So, and I've released one every single day except for April Fool's Day because I want everything to be taken seriously. But if you are looking for something to do and you're a saber fencer, watch a foil analysis video that I did with like a top fencer or a coach, or look at some épée thing from like an Olympic champion or a world champion that I've done one of these with. I mean, just because it could be a good way to mix it up for you, just and keep things fresh and interesting. So
yeah, and I'll do another plug because I'm an FIE commentator too, and now I'm going to get all the booze. That Karen and the team, they're doing a really nice job of making highlight videos and trying to turn those out quickly of all the World Cups and older World Cups. So there's no excuse, Andrew. You can watch your videos. You can watch FIE videos. You got videos upon videos of videos. So
yeah. Don't
just watch cat videos.
Right. That's true. The cat videos, you don't learn a lot of tactics. I mean, they keep, they're very repetitive, those cats, although they're very good hunters. If we had the focus that cats do when they go after their prey, we would be unbeatable in this sport.
And the reflexes.
Fantastic reflexes. And I would say, again, talking about the video analysis, this is a perfect opportunity. Don't try and guess what the athletes are going to do. Put yourself in the shoes of having to fence both of them at different times and say, what would I do? What would my game plan be if I'm fencing against fencer A on the right? And then how would I defend against that action, or how would I try and penetrate that defense? And then say, okay, now let me look at fencer B, and what would I do against him? And try and blunt that amazing long attack he has. Those are the things which are going to be useful. And I would also say, allow yourself to be inspired by other sports and other activities. If you watch professional tennis, that's as close to a martial art as you can get without it actually being a martial art, because tactically it's exactly the same as fencing or wrestling or boxing. You understand your opponent's weaknesses. You move your opponent around to particular areas of the court and then exploit what you want to do to finally win that point. Don't have that narrow focus that the only thing that matters is your sport, your gender, your weapon. Expand it a little more. There are a lot of things you can do.
Yeah, and The Inner Game of Tennis is a really good older book, good for sports psychology. But you can do what I do when I watch videos, is I watch like Olga Karlin and I go, ooh, oh, so fast. Or you could do that.
You could do that too. That's fine. Nothing wrong with entertainment. See, so you are able to sit and watch a movie, even if it's a fencing
just
video.
Fencing and Daryl Homer when he has his footwork, it's mesmerizing. So I usually just like it for the entertainment value. So, anyways,
definitely.
Andrew, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, it was great talking to you guys today. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.